For years, the Irwin family has seemed unstoppable. Wildlife warriors dedicated to conservation, carrying on Steve Irwin's dream with passion and purpose. But behind the cameras and public smiles, a heartbreaking shift has been unfolding. A change so profound that even the strongest member of the Irwin family, Terry, was moved to tears. What really happened behind the scenes, and how did Robert Irwin's transformation shake the very foundation of the family's legacy? The truth may surprise you. Steve Irwin's unforgettable legacy. Steve Irwin wasn't just a wildlife conservationist, he was a force of nature. His boundless energy, fearlessness, and love for animals made him a household name across the globe. Whether he was wrestling crocodiles, saving endangered species, or teaching the world about conservation, he did it with an enthusiasm that was contagious. But behind the daring stunts and iconic crikey catchphrase, Steve had a deeper mission. He wanted to bridge the gap between humans and wildlife, helping people understand and protect the natural world. His work at the Australia Zoo wasn't just a job, it was his life's calling. Then, in 2006, tragedy struck.
Australian crocodile hunter Steve Irwin has died during a diving expedition near Port Douglas in Australia.
While filming for a documentary, Steve was fatally injured by a stingray, a freak accident that no one saw coming. The world was stunned. Millions mourned the loss of a man who had dedicated his life to nature. But for his family, the pain was beyond words. Terry Irwin lost more than just her husband. She lost her best friend, business partner, and the father of her children. Their kids, Bindi and Robert, were just 8 and 2 years old when their world changed forever. The media swarmed in, tributes poured out, and the Australia Zoo suddenly faced an uncertain future. Most people would have crumbled under the weight of such a loss. But Terry, she made a decision that would define the Irwin family's future. She would not let Steve's legacy fade away. She had to be strong for her children, for the zoo, and for the mission they had built together. But as she threw herself into the work, she had no idea that a silent storm was brewing within her own family. The immediate aftermath, a family in shock. When Steve Irwin passed away, the world grieved, but no one felt the loss more than his wife and children. In an instant, Terry Irwin went from being Steve's lifelong partner to a widow, left with the overwhelming task of carrying on his dream. Alone. The days following Steve's death were a blur. Reporters camped outside their home and news stations ran constant tributes. But inside the Australia Zoo, reality had set in. Steve was gone, and life would never be the same. Terry was faced with impossible choices. Should she continue running the Australia Zoo or step away and focus on healing? Should she shield her kids from the public eye or encourage them to embrace the work their father loved? The weight of these decisions was immense. Then there were the financial struggles. The zoo was a massive operation, one that Steve had always been the face of. Without him, some questioned whether it would survive. Donors pulled back, attendance dropped, and behind the scenes, bills started piling up. But Terry refused to give up. She made a promise to Steve to keep his mission alive. And despite her grief, she pushed forward, working day and night to ensure the Australia Zoo didn't just survive, but thrived. Through it all, her children were watching. Bindi, the eldest, found solace in the media, giving emotional tributes to her father. She wanted the world to know how much he had meant to her. But Robert, he was too young to understand the weight of what had happened. At just 2 years old, he didn't fully grasp what it meant to lose his father. But as he grew, the absence of Steve became painfully clear. And that's when Terry started noticing a strange shift in her son. A shift that would leave her in tears. Terry's unbreakable commitment to Steve's mission. With every passing year, the reality of Steve's absence became more evident. Terry had no time to grieve, she had a legacy to uphold. While many expected her to step away, she did the opposite. She threw herself into her work, ensuring the Australia Zoo remained a global leader in wildlife conservation. She expanded the zoo, launched new conservation programs, and turned the wildlife hospital into one of the largest in the world. But despite her resilience, the struggles were constant. Running the zoo was one thing, raising 2 children in the spotlight was another. Terry made a controversial decision. She kept Steve's name alive at every opportunity. Documentaries, interviews, conservation events. She ensured the world never forgot who Steve Irwin was. Some critics accused her of living in the past, but for Terry, it was never about fame. It was about honoring a promise. But as she worked tirelessly to preserve Steve's dream, she failed to see what was happening to Robert. For years, he was just a happy, curious child, following his sister's lead and exploring the zoo. But then, something changed. As he entered his teenage years, he started acting differently. His confidence grew, his passion for wildlife intensified, and he began mirroring Steve's mannerisms in eerie ways. It was no longer just genetics. It was as if Steve was living through him. And for Terry, watching her son become a reflection of the man she had lost was both beautiful and heartbreaking. Robert Irwin, a boy destined for greatness. From the moment Robert could walk, he was drawn to nature. He spent his childhood surrounded by crocodiles, kangaroos, and exotic animals. But the world saw him as something more. The next Steve Irwin. As a toddler, Robert was carefree and playful. But as he grew, the weight of expectations became heavier. People weren't just watching him, they were waiting to see if he would become his father. By the time he was a teenager, Robert's transformation was undeniable. His enthusiasm, his voice, his mannerisms, they were all eerily similar to Steve's. But was it natural, or was Robert feeling pressured to fill his father's shoe? The media loved the comparisons, and Terry felt both pride and sadness watching her son follow this path. The world saw it as a beautiful continuation of Steve's legacy, but for Terry it was a constant reminder of the man she had lost. Then, Robert did something that no one expected. He stepped out of Steve's shadow and found his own path. A path that would define his legacy in a completely new way. A mysterious change in Robert that left Terry in tears. For years, Robert Irwin had been known as the cheerful, adventurous son of Steve Irwin. He grew up in the Australia Zoo, always surrounded by nature, cameras, and adoring fans. But as he entered his teenage years, something began to change. Something that even his mother, Terry, couldn't ignore. It started subtly. The way he spoke about animals, the way he carried himself, the way he fearlessly handled creatures that would terrify most people. At first, it was heartwarming, a sign that Steve's spirit truly lived on in his son. But the resemblance became so strong that it started to feel surreal. Terry wasn't alone in noticing this. Fans, media outlets, and even Steve's old colleagues saw it too. Robert wasn't just following in his father's footsteps, he was becoming a mirror image of him. The way he smiled, his excitement for conservation, even the small quirks in his speech. It was as if Steve had never left. For Terry, it was bittersweet. She had spent years keeping her husband's legacy alive, but now she was watching her son become a living reflection of the man she loved. Then came the moment that broke her. Robert was standing in front of a massive crocodile, speaking to a crowd at the Australia Zoo. His energy was electric, his knowledge deep, his passion undeniable. He wasn't just Steve's son, he was carrying the same fire his father once had. Tears welled up in Terry's eyes. She realized something at that moment. Steve wasn't gone. He lived on, not just in memories, but in Robert. And that realization was overwhelming. But was Robert's transformation his own choice? Or was he unknowingly stepping into a role the world had created for him? Stepping into the spotlight, Robert's rise to fame. For most of his childhood, Robert had been known as Steve Irwin's son, but as he grew older, that title no longer felt enough. He wasn't just following in his father's footsteps, he was blazing his own trail, and the world was starting to notice. His big moment came on The Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon. Stepping onto that stage, he carried the same infectious energy Steve had years ago. He brought along exotic animals, effortlessly handled them, and educated millions in a way that felt both thrilling and natural. The clip of Robert on Fallon quickly went viral. People couldn't believe what they were seeing. He was confident, knowledgeable, and charismatic just like Steve. But this time, it wasn't nostalgia driving the audience's excitement, it was Robert himself. From that moment, everything changed. He became a global personality, stepping into the world of conservation media in ways no one had expected. He was no longer just a little boy growing up in the zoo. He was the next great voice in wildlife conservation. His appearances became more frequent. From late-night talk shows to nature documentaries, Robert was everywhere. But it wasn't just about being famous. He was using his platform to spread awareness about endangered species, habitat destruction, and climate change. Yet behind the scenes, Terry watched all of this with a complicated mix of pride and concern. She saw how the world was shaping Robert's path. He was no longer just a kid with a passion. He was becoming an icon, just like his father. But was he ready for it? Robert's passion for photography, a new chapter in the legacy. While the world expected Robert to become a version of Steve, he had other ideas. He wanted to honor his father's legacy, but he also wanted to carve his own path. That's when he discovered photography. Unlike the high-energy world of TV appearances and crocodile wrestling, photography was a different kind of storytelling. It allowed Robert to capture nature's raw beauty in a way that words never could. And it wasn't long before he realized he had a gift. His photos weren't just good, they were breathtaking. From the depths of the jungle to the vast landscapes of Australia, Robert's camera captured nature in its purest form. His work quickly gained recognition, winning awards and being featured in prestigious galleries worldwide. Then, in 2020, Robert took a photo that would change everything. An image of a forest in Australia, completely scorched by wildfires. The picture was haunting, a stark reminder of the environmental crises facing the planet. It won Wildlife Photographer of the Year, but more importantly, it sparked a global conversation about climate change. For Terry, it was a defining moment. This wasn't just Steve's son living in his father's shadow. This was Robert, using his own skills, his own passion, to make an impact. And for the first time, the world began to see him as more than just an Irwin. They saw him as a conservationist in his own right. But with this newfound recognition came something else. The growing weight of expectations. The weight of carrying a family legacy. Living under the Irwin name was both a blessing and a curse. Robert and Bindi never had the luxury of being unknown. They grew up in the spotlight, and with that came pressure. An unspoken expectation to be just like their father. But how do you live up to a legend? From a young age, Robert had cameras in his face. Interviews, TV shows, public appearances. It was all part of his life. But as he matured, he realized something unsettling. People didn't just admire him. They expected him to be Steve. And that was exhausting. He struggled with finding his own identity while honoring his father's mission. Every move he made was compared to Steve. Every speech, every action, every decision, it all came with the question, what would Steve have done? For Terry, it was a painful thing to watch. She knew Robert wasn't just Steve's son, he was his own person. But could the world ever see him that way? That's when Robert made a crucial choice. He decided to stop trying to be Steve and instead be himself. He shifted his focus from public entertainment to true conservation work. He led research projects, expanded wildlife programs, and started pushing for stronger environmental policies. Slowly but surely, the world stopped calling him the next Steve Irwin. Instead, they recognized him for what he truly was, the first Robert Irwin. And that, for Terry, was the proudest moment of all. Terry's emotional struggles and private battles. Through all the public appearances and conservation work, one thing remained hidden: Terry's private struggles. While she was celebrated for keeping Steve's mission alive, few people understood the emotional toll it took on her. For years, she avoided the spotlight as much as possible. She let Robert and Bindi take center stage while she worked tirelessly behind the scenes. She was proud of them, but the truth was, watching them grow up without Steve was painful. The hardest part? Watching Robert become more and more like his father. Every time he handled a crocodile or delivered a speech with Steve's passion, it brought back a flood of emotions. It was beautiful, but it also broke her heart. She also faced the loneliness that came with being the keeper of Steve's legacy. Many wondered why Terry never remarried, why she never moved on. But for her, there was no moving on. She had built a life with Steve, and that life didn't just disappear. In rare interviews, she admitted that she never felt the need to date again. "I had my happily ever after," she once said. But it wasn't just about love, it was about dedication. She wasn't just Steve's wife, she was his partner in a mission bigger than both of them. Yet, despite the weight she carried, she never let it stop her. She continued fighting for wildlife, expanding Steve's work, and supporting her children in their own conservation journeys. She had moments of doubt, moments where the pressure felt unbearable. But one thing always kept her going: the promise she made to Steve. A promise to keep his dream alive, no matter how difficult it was. Looking at Robert and Bindi, she knew one thing for certain: she had kept that promise. But as she watched her children step into the spotlight, she also knew something else. It was time for her to let go. The future of the Irwin family, what's next? With Terry stepping back from the public eye, Robert and Bindi are now leading the charge for the Irwin family's mission. But the world is watching closely. What's next for them? For Robert, the answer is clear. He wants to take conservation to the next level. No longer just the face of the Australia Zoo, he's becoming an active leader in environmental policy, working with global organizations to push for stronger protections for wildlife. His crocodile research program is expanding, using new technology to track and study crocodile behavior. He's also focusing on climate change awareness, using his photography to highlight the devastating effects on ecosystems worldwide. But Robert isn't stopping there. He has expressed interest in creating his own wildlife conservation foundation, one that goes beyond the Australia Zoo. His goal? To take Steve's mission to every corner of the planet. As for Bindi, she has become a powerful advocate for animal welfare, balancing conservation work with raising her own family. Many believe she will take over full leadership of the Australia Zoo, ensuring its future remains strong. But there's another looming question. Will the Irwins ever expand beyond Australia? With Robert's growing influence, many speculate that he could take his conservation efforts worldwide, opening new centers, leading global initiatives, and inspiring future generations. Terry, meanwhile, is beginning to take a step back, allowing Robert and Bindi to carry the torch. Though she remains active in conservation, she's shifting her focus to mentoring and guiding her children as they take the reins. Yet through all the change, one thing remains constant: their unwavering dedication to Steve's mission. For Terry, seeing her children take over is both a relief and a source of deep pride. She knows that the future of the Irwin family is in good hands. But even with all their success, one question still lingers. What would Steve think of everything they've accomplished? And if he were here today, what would he say? A powerful ending. What would Steve say today? If Steve Irwin were alive today, what would he think of his family's journey? Would he be proud? Would he be surprised? Or would he simply say, "Crikey, that's amazing"? The truth is, Steve's legacy has not only survived, it has grown beyond anything he could have imagined. His wife Terry took the heartbreak of losing him and turned it into a lifetime commitment to his dream. She never gave up, never walked away, even when things got tough. His daughter Bindi grew into a fierce advocate for animals and a role model for young conservationists. She carries his passion, but in her own way, balancing her career with raising a family, ensuring that Steve's love for wildlife is passed down to future generations. And then there's Robert, the son, who never got the chance to truly know his father, yet somehow became a reflection of him, not because he was forced into it, but because he truly shares Steve's passion and energy for the natural world. Robert has become his own man. No longer just Steve's son, he is now a globally recognized conservationist, a talented photographer, and a leader in wildlife protection. His work has reached people far beyond Australia, inspiring a new generation to fight for nature. If Steve could see Robert today, traveling the world, leading conservation efforts and inspiring millions, he would be speechless. But one thing is certain, he would be proud. Because in the end, the Irwin family's story isn't just about one man. It's about resilience, passion, and a love for nature that transcends generations. It's about turning loss into purpose, grief into action, and love into an unstoppable force for good. And as long as Robert, Bindi, and Terry continue their work, Steve Irwin's spirit will never truly be gone. His legacy isn't just alive, it's thriving, and the best part? It's only just beginning.